5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Up short.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the One Puck Short podcast. It is Thursday the 19th of November 2015, and I'm your host, Rob McGregor. No guest this week. Did try and get someone lined up. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get the stars to align, but still plenty to talk about. I'd like to start with the Travis Harmonic situation. Now, the New York Islanders blue liner asked for a trade in the summer due to family concerns. He's looking to head back to Western Canada. He's a Manitoba native from St. Malo in Manitoba. As I said, he wants to head back that way, and it's been stressed by several sources, Arthur Staple, for example, that this is not to do with the team, it's not to do with the move to Brooklyn, he's not unhappy with the coach or having to switch between Long Island and Brooklyn for the training to games, nothing like that. They've said it's entirely to do with a family-related issue. Now, Harmonic is due to, as he put it, address the situation with teammates and then the media later today. At the time of recording, that hasn't happened. But family concerns is the bracket it fits under. As I said, he's looking to go to Western Canada if at all possible, which means Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton or Vancouver are his destinations of choice. Now, Garth Snow has apparently been trying to move him since the summer. He's been talking to different general managers for about 6 weeks. It seems to be the number that's out there. But it's not easy to make that kind of a deal when you've only got 4 teams potentially to talk to. Now, TSN's Darren Dredger did say that the list may expand to other Western cities, other Western teams, but right now it's just those 4 Canadians sides. And yeah, it's really hard to figure this out. I wrote a piece on the blog earlier today looking at Harmonic and what he offers to the Islanders, because the ultimate point here is that the Islanders want to keep Travis Harmonic. He does great things off the ice. He does great things on the ice. They mainly use him 5-on-5 and when short-handed, but he's been employed on the power play as well when required. He's mostly played with Calvin DeHaan this year, but more recently he's stepped up to the top pair with Nick Leddy. Yeah, he's a top 3 D-man in my mind. Is he a permanent top pair? Maybe not. I can see the argument that he isn't, but you look at everything. He's 25, and he brings so much to the team to be able to play in all those situations like that. That's a big loss to the Islanders to lose Harmonic at this point, because he's a big part of that team. They drafted him in 2008 and they've developed him as a player. They brought him through. He's the ice time leader right now with just over 23 minutes per night. And it's just such a difficult situation, because the other thing is they got him on such a great contract as well. He signed through to 2020. I mean, he'll only be 29 when this deal finishes. He'll turn 30 in the August of 2020. And, I mean, he's got a $3.625 million cap hit. And it's just so frustrating for the Islanders, because how do you have to part with a guy like that who you've brought through and who's served you so well? I don't. Sorry, he's got a $3.857 million cap hit. Sorry, but still, that's an incredibly great value. He's one of the best value defensemen in the league, and they're being asked to give him up. Now, one of the quotes from an executive who spoke to Elliot Friedman was the problem with them trading Travis Harmonic is they want Travis Harmonic. As I said, the Islanders don't want to move this guy. He's 25, he's an integral part of their team. He's not irreplaceable. Nobody's saying he's irreplaceable, but to find a deal which works in the current climate is so difficult. To find any defenseman in the current climate is so difficult, and Garth Snow wants someone of equal ability back. He doesn't want prospects or picks. He wants a replacement defenseman if he's going to move Travis Harmonic, because the Islanders are at a point where they are talking about winning now. They aren't building anymore. They aren't developing prospects. I mean, they are on the side, Ryan Pullock and so forth. But the point is, this is a team that feels like it's starting to open a window for itself. And losing one of your top 3 D-men like that compromises that situation. Now, they are, as I said, looking. There are 4 teams potentially Snow could deal with at this point. As we said, others may be added, but the Jets, Oilers, Flames and Canucks are the ones in play, so to speak. I had a tough time figuring out who Calgary might be able to offer that would suit the Islanders. And people keep half jokingly, I don't know. Some people say Dougie Hamilton because he's had a rough start in Calgary. That's just nonsensical, though. Because he had a bad start, we're going to trade one of the most talented young D-men in the league. That's ridiculous. The Flames aren't going to move Hamilton. They aren't going to move Brody. They aren't going to move Giordano. Who else have they got? Well, Chris Russell is one that I'm sure Calgary fans would like to see the back of. But that doesn't make sense from the Islanders' point of view because Russell's struggled. And why would you go from a guy who is clearly capable of your top three to someone who's struggled to crack Calgary's top four? It doesn't add up. And so I can't see that being an option. Dennis Wideman, again, 32, he comes with a heavier cap hit. And I don't know if Wideman brings a sufficient quality to fill that role. He had a great year last year, but so did the whole of the Flames roster, and they're struggling right now. So I'm not sure what the Flames could offer. In Winnipeg, the two names that keep coming up are Dustin Byfuglien and Tyler Myers. Now, Byfuglien's an unrestricted free agent in the summer, but the only way I see the Jets moving Byfuglien is if they are 100% certain he will not re-sign with the Jets. That's the only way I think they move Dustin Byfuglien, because he's such a big part of that team, both metaphorically and physically, that moving him just doesn't make sense. Now, he currently earns 5.2, or his cap hit is $5.2 million, so the Islanders could take that on fine. But again, the Jets aren't going to move Byfuglien unless they know he's not coming back. He's not going to re-sign. He's 30 now, so this is probably going to be his last big deal, really. So they're not going to move that guy unless they know he is not coming back to Manitoba. But if that's the trigger for them seeking a deal for another defenseman, someone who is signed moving forward like Harmonic, then if you're Gus Snow, you're going to want some kind of assurance that Dustin Byfuglien will re-sign with the Islanders. Because the Islanders don't want to trade Travis Harmonic for Dustin Byfuglien, only for Dustin Byfuglien to then leave in the summer. That's ridiculous. Tyler Myers, he's seen a bit of an upturning play. He had a terrible time in Buffalo after that very strong rookie year. But the Sabres signed into some ridiculously crazy, huge, mega money deal. We all remember it, this cap-beating signing bonus and $12 million in the first year, all this kind of junk. Well, the actual take-home is starting to go down now for Tyler Myers. From this year on, it becomes a much more manageable amount. His cap hit remains $5.5 million. Up through until 2019, if I remember correctly. 2019. And this year he takes home $5 million. Next year he takes home $5 million. The year after that, 4, 3, then 3.5, then 3. So his actual take-home pay is starting to decrease. Now, the Islanders aren't the cash-strapped, thrifty team of old, but when you're talking hard dollars, real take-home, that's maybe a factor. And if they think that Myers can continue to rediscover his best form in Brooklyn, well, maybe that's not such a bad deal for the Islanders. The other team to look at are the Oilers, who desperately need help on defence and would certainly benefit from someone like Harmonic, who can come in, play in all situations, has a good record, a good pedigree, and obviously wants to be in that part of the world. He's 25. He's signed until 2020. He fits in nicely with what the Oilers are trying to do. They've got a lot of young talent. Yes, again, they need help on defence, but Hall, McDavid, Yakupov, Eberle, all these guys, they could do with a guy like Hamonic because he can play and grow with those other young players. At 25, he's ideally positioned in both age and experience and ability to help the Oilers now and moving forward. What can the Oilers offer in return? Well, this is the tricky bit. Now, a lot of Edmonton fans often unfairly malign Mark Fane, but Fane would not be a bad return for the Islanders in a lot of ways. He's a decent defensive defenseman. He's familiar with the East after 4 years with New Jersey. His cap hit isn't horrendous. I think it was his accident earlier on. And was it 3.6 million or 3.62? And you look at someone like that, and despite the fact people keep griping about what Fane has done, I mean, last year was an abomination for the Oilers. I don't think anybody is saying otherwise. They just didn't kick on like people expected them to. So, Fane's, I don't want to say he's run out of time in Edmonton because that's extremely unfair, but as I said, a lot of people fire a lot of criticism at him. Well, if he's that much of a problem, I'm sure the Islanders will take him back. As I said, he is the kind of guy who could fill that hole. He's only 28. He's signed till 2018. As I said, he could fit in the top four. Whether Calvin DeHaan or whoever is ready to play in the number 3 role that Hamnick would vacate. And the other thing is Fane enough to prize Hamnick away from the Islanders? I'm not sure he is on his own, but they could sweeten the pot. And what with, well, that's up for debate. Depends what you think Travis Harmonic is worth, I guess. Now, Oscar Klefbom and Darnell Nurse have also been mentioned, but moving either Klefbom or Nurse doesn't make sense to me from the Oilers side of things, because these are 2 good young D-men on a young team. Why would you move those guys, especially Klefbom, who only signed a 7-year extension in September? So that one doesn't quite make sense. Vancouver, who apparently Garsnow hasn't spoken to yet, or haven't spoken to Snow, whichever way you want to look at it. There's a couple of guys maybe who could raise some interest there. Chris Tanev is 25. He's signed through to 2020. And he's got a slightly higher cap hit, $4.45 million per season. But whether he's a starting point for Jim Benning to use as a package, or the core piece of a deal, maybe. He's a talented young defenseman. I can't see them wanting to give up someone like Edler. Dan Hamhouse wants to stay in Vancouver, so again, even if the Islanders acquired him, it may only be short term. So there's all these little things that Garsnow has to navigate. And it's been a strange season for the Islanders. They're 3rd in the Metro, but people kind of have this feeling that something isn't quite right with the team. I think maybe part of it is people have been so used to being bad for so long, they've maybe got a little bit too high on the recent success the team's had. Now, at 23 points right now, they're just ahead of Pittsburgh, just ahead of New Jersey. I think that's about where they're going to be. Fighting for one of the top 3 spots, but equally trying to avoid or in the mix for a wild card spot. I think that's about where the Islanders are right now. I think the Rangers are going to win the division. Washington will probably finish 2nd. I don't think that's going to change a huge amount over the coming months. I think that's already kind of evened out a little bit. So the Islanders kind of are where they are and where I expect them to be. Islanders fan base is always a little bit strange, because they live the highs higher than perhaps anyone, but also they feel the lows in a way that is often mind-boggling. So it'd be interesting to see what happens there. Again, people only want the best for their team, and that's understandable. But the Hamonic situation probably isn't going to go away anytime soon. It's out in public now. People know he would like to move. They know Snow is talking, but equally it's pretty apparent Snow isn't going to give him up for nothing. And Hamonic seems fine with that, by all accounts. He accepts that there is a process to go through here, and it's not an easy situation for the club, the player, for anyone. Just one final thought on the Islanders. I mentioned that there's this funny feeling around the club. One thing I've wondered this season, because he's been under fire before, is what Jack Capuano's future is. Now, I'm not saying he should be dismissed. This isn't some rallying call to fire Jack Capuano right now. As I said, they're 3rd in the Metropolitan Division. Why would you fire a guy when you're in a decent position? But the curiosity or the question, the query I have moving forward is whether Jack Capuano is one of these guys who lays the table so someone else can dine out on it. And we've heard that phrase before. The most famous example, or most famous recent example, I think, is Michel Therrien in Pittsburgh. He laid the table, Dan Bylsma came in, the Penguins won the cup. So I wonder if Capuano is that guy setting the table for someone else to step in and take the Islanders to that next level, and maybe to Stanley Cup success. Staying with the trade rumours for a moment, Matt Duchene was recently linked with the move away from Colorado, though how strong that link actually was is up for debate. There was a comment made by Joe Sakic in talking to Adrian Data, who's now working for, I completely forget who's working for. I apologise, Adrian, if you happen to be listening to One Puck Short. But he spoke to Adrian Data, and there was a conversation which basically, it went along the lines of, is everyone other than Nathan McKinnon available? Or is McKinnon the only player on the Avs roster untouchable? And it kind of spiralled a bit from there. That was the ready, steady, go, and everybody jumped the gun, and off they went. And there was talk that there had been a conversation between Joe Sakic and Ottawa's Brian Murray about Duchene and whether the Senators were interested. There were other teams who apparently called the Avs regarding Duchene. Now, whether this was just a tactic to light a fire under a few people's ass. And I mean, Duchesne was one of the 3 stars of the week immediately following this whole hoodoo. So whether that was the tactic Sakic was trying to use and send a rocket across that roster's bow, because Lord knows they need it, it's interesting because it is a team in need of a shake-up. McKinnon's probably going to be the number one long-term. I think that's fair to say. But Duchene's still a quality player for this team. He's highly skilled. He's got great speed. Maybe not the best defensively, but he loves being in Denver. He's a passionate guy who loves being there. And I just think it's frankly bizarre they'd even put this out there. It didn't make sense. This was even up for discussion. It was just bizarre. Whether others are moved, Jerome McGinley doesn't seem to want to go anywhere. What they do, why not they do in goal? If Rato Berra keeps this up and Calvin Pickard gets a chance, Pickard came up and he went back down without featuring because Varlamov was healthy again. But I mean, Pickard looked NHL ready. People believe he's NHL ready, but he's stuck in the AHL. Ironing out a few more kinks. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but he's on the verge. Berra's playing fantastically well. Do they move Berra while his stock's high? Do they move Pickard as a strong prospect, or do they move Varlamov? And there's been a few suggestions that is their preferred choice. They'll save some money. They've still got 2 decent goalies, and there are teams who would take on Semyon Varlamov for something that might be able to help the Avs, and that mainly translates to defence because they had horse shit in their own end. But it's really curious how the Avs are going about this and how they're trying or looking to try and get better. I mean, Tyson Barrie was in the rumour mix as well. It's all just so bizarre in Denver right now that I don't know what to make of it. I don't know if they're in this really strong division, they simply don't know what to do, or if they genuinely believe they've got the right roster, just not getting the bounces right now, or their luck will turn. Or I don't know what's going on there. I find it really hard to fathom because there is talent there, but they've also lost a lot of talent. I mean, moving Duchesne would mean they've lost O'Reilly, Stastny, and Duchesne within the space of 2 years. That would be just madness. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how things pan out in Denver. That's for sure.
Puck short.
Another team who've struggled slightly of late, though bizarrely they are still among the playoff teams in the East, is Pittsburgh, whose high-powered offense, it just isn't working right now. They've got the 4th lowest number of goals for in the NHL. Only Carolina, Anaheim, and I've forgotten who the 4th team were. Philadelphia. There we go. They're Pennsylvania rivals. So there must be something in the water in Pennsylvania. But yeah, only 3 teams have got fewer goals scored than Penguins, despite Malkin, Crosby, Kessel, Letang. They're stacked with offense. But they're just not scoring there. Power play is the 4th worst in the league as well, at 14.3%. But they're still 7-3-0 in their last 10. They're in a wildcard spot right now. They're snapping at the heels of the Islanders. It's really strange. And Coach Mike Johnson's under pressure. Ollie Matters out for 3 to 4 weeks with an upper body injury. Now, just like to deviate slightly on this one, that he was injured after basically being pushed into... Well, he was pushed towards the boards by Minnesota's Nino Niederreiter. And just as Minnesota happened to open the gate to their bench. So Matter collided effectively with the gate or the opening. Now, he's not seriously hurt. He's in some discomfort. There's no internal damage or broken bones. So he'll be out for about 3 to 4 weeks. But just as I said, to deviate slightly, to me, that was a play, a hit, a whatever you want to call it. It was basically a push. Even Niederreiter said he pushed Matter. That was contact which didn't need to happen in my book. Matter had already played the puck off. Niederreiter was on him, so he wasn't really a threat because he had a wild skater with him. So I don't know why that play needed to happen. It didn't need to happen. It's this bizarre finish your checks thing. I don't know. It was a poor play on Niederreiter's part, in my opinion. It just shoved the guy in the back. I guess it was unfortunate that it just happened to coincide with the gate being open, but if he hadn't shoved him, that wouldn't have happened anyway. So it's just a strange one, as I said, to deviate slightly. But the Penguins, I can't figure whether they are just out of form. They haven't quite meshed yet. Whether they, I don't know. I can't fathom it. You know, there are too many cooks. That's what some people have suggested with their power play. There are simply too many cooks. So they're constantly looking for each other rather than one guy taking the impetus and just going with it. And Evgeny Malkin was, well, apparently misquoted, as all Russians are in these interviews, that they're frustrated and angry with each other. But the point remains that these guys are struggling. Malkin has 6 goals and 16 points in 18 games. Kessel has 6 goals and 12. Letang has just 1 goal but 10 points. He's a minus 11. If you read too much into that, Crosby, 2 goals, 9 points, minus 8. Hornquist, he's got 4 goals now. He took a little while to get going. Perron finally broke his egg for, what was it? What did we say? 20-something weeks or so many? It was this insane amount of games that had gone before Perron scored, but just the whole thing, they've sorted out their bottom 6 with guys like Bonino and Fair and, you know, Dupuis. Granted, he's been in and out a little bit, but it's just this strange situation where you kind of feel Pittsburgh are nearly there. Their blue line needs help, but you'd have thought the offense would carry them through. It just kind of hasn't. But fortunately for them, Marc-Andre Fleury has been excellent, truly excellent. And people seem surprised about this, which I think is a little unfair on him. I mean, he's been good the last couple of years, which happens to coincide with when Mike Bales was employed as their goalie coach. I'm just putting that out there. So, One Puck Short is brought to you in association with Eastside Hockey Manager, an in-depth ice hockey management simulation brought to you by Sports Interactive and Sega, developers of the world-famous Football Manager series, coming soon for PC via Steam. Finally, the format of the All-Star Game, which will be in Nashville in January, has been announced. It will be a 3-on-3 tournament, which some people suspected it would be anyway. Each division will have a team of 11. That's 6 forwards, 3D, 2 goalies. The format is quite simple. The Pacific will play the Central in one semi-final, the Atlantic will play the Metro in the other semi-final, and then there will be a grand final of Metro versus Central or whatever. Each game is 20 minutes. The winning team will split $1 million between the 11 of them. Now, I kind of like the idea, to be honest, because the All-Star Game was a bit of a joke, a bit chintzy maybe, I don't know. It was something just wasn't quite, it doesn't really capture too many people's imaginations. The skills contest people quite enjoy, but the game itself was a little bit farcical. Does this change that? Maybe not, but at least it shifts things a little bit. I just kind of think this is a bit more of a fun way to do it rather than some lame game where nobody really plays. This just embraces the offense, basically. They've just gone whole hog and gone, let's just fire wagon it and go 3-on-3 and just let people do the deeks and dangles, and we'll have 10-8 games, but it somehow feels less stupid because it's 3-on-3. And I kind of like the idea. There's a couple of bits I do have issues with. Like others, I will miss the fantasy draft, especially as the only players the fans can vote on, they can pick one player from each division. That's it. So basically fans will vote for 4 players, one from each division. They will be named the team captain. And then the hockey ops will choose the rest. Why does it have to be done that way? Why can't it just be open to a fan vote? Just sod it, just do it. Heck, you know what? If you want the hockey ops to pick, a player, if they want to be involved, just tell them to pick who the captains are. Let them pick, because they're going to want Sidney Crosby there. And Ovechkin will get voted in. They're probably going to want Taves there and others. So just let them do that. They can make sure they get their guy there. Hell, they can make sure they get a representative from all 30 teams, because they still want that stupid representation from all 30 teams, because somebody from Carolina has to be there. Somebody from Columbus has to be there. And whatever other bullshit you want to spurt out. But I just think it kind of is a step forward, but equally it's got one of those bungee cords on it which kind of reins it back a little bit. From the coaching side, the coaches will be the coaches of the divisional leaders on January 9th. So right now we were Alan Vigneault, would be one of them. Who else would we have? If it started tomorrow, we would also have Michael Terry, who was my pick for Jack Adams, of course. Lindy Ruff, who's having a great time in Dallas right now. And it would be Daryl Sutter, because the Kings are top of the Pacific. Good turnaround for them. But I like the idea that the format will change. I still think they're kind of reining things in a bit, though, with one thing and another. And I know Damien Cox put a few tweets out earlier, which I don't necessarily disagree with, that the NHL has basically tried everything it can to make the All-Star Game mean something. And it's kind of on the NHLPA to want to push it and make it a little bit more, because it is a fun fan weekend. It just needs to find its groove a little bit. Now, I know Greg Wyshynski earlier said there would be other player-related activities at the weekend. He was inundated with people saying, please be a beer pong tournament. So I could be on board with that. But it'd be interesting to see what they do with these other activities they talk about. So the game itself, I'm intrigued to see how this 3-on-3 tournament works. I like the idea of it, and I hope it's played in the spirit that maybe it should be. Just embrace the offense, just have fun, because it felt kind of lame playing 5-on-5 with that ethos in place. It just wasn't right. So, well, that about wraps it up for this week. Thank you very much for listening. You can find me on Twitter at RobMcGregor35. Of course, you can find the blog, onepuckshort.wordpress.com. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/onepuckshort. If you ever want to get in touch with the show, you can email onepuckshort@gmail.com. On the site, on the right-hand side, there's also a couple of ways you can help support One Puck Short. There's a PayPal donate button, and there's also an Amazon affiliate link. So doing your Christmas shopping and things, it doesn't cost you anything extra, but we get a little kickback for everything you buy on there. It's not much, but in turn it helps with things like the hosting costs for the podcast, the website, and other such things. It's not cheap, so to speak. I'm happy to do it because I enjoy doing this, and that won't change. It's just little things if people do want to help the site and help the podcast along. If you're an iTunes subscriber and you haven't done already, it'd be great if you could leave a review on there as well. That obviously helps promote the podcast on the iTunes charts. But other than that, all I've got to say is thanks again for listening. Take care, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.